that something in you where you wanted to strive for better. So describe for me, what has your journey been like in life?
The journey it's been very hard because, I was on public assistance, so it was like, at first it was a boundary there. Anybody knows about public assistance, they don't want you to go so far or they're going to cut it off.
When you describe yourself now, tell me, who's Freddie Stevenson, the man that you are now?
A few years ago, I remember in college, they would always have speakers come in and ask us who we are. I wouldn't have been able to answer the question. It probably would have had something to do with football. I'm a fullback for Florida State. I want to play in the NFL. But now it's just simple. I'm Freddie Stevenson, man of purpose.
This is a passion of mine. The whole premise behind the Jazzy Conversations with Jazz podcast is to spotlight the fact that it is now time for you to get your dope comeback story.
Hey, say Jazzy Conversations with Jazz. Jazzy Conversations with Jazz. Say Jazzy Conversations with Jazz. Jazzy Conversations with Jazz.
Every Monday, I call people into a studio and we dig into their comeback stories, because I know that we see people in their glory and we see people when they're on top, when they can have that silver lining to them, but we all go through some things, right? We all go through some things, and I think once we're real with people and we let people know the trials and tribulations that we've gone through, it only makes us human and it connects one of us.
So I just want to know, what would be your advice to someone who is looking to start their own podcast?
First and foremost, let me back up. Find your voice. What are you going to talk about? Is it something that people want to listen to? How long will your podcast be? What's going to be the consistency of your podcast? Are you going to do it like weekly, daily? Are you going to do it monthly? So once you find that, because that's going to indicate if somebody wants to listen to your podcast or not.
I do know how I'm doing it. I'm doing it with God. I'm doing it because this is a passion of mine. And when you are passionate about something, you're not going to stop. So it really it comes down to how bad do you want it.
It really does come down to how bad do you want it. Listen, Jazzy crew, if you are here, then you are now tuned into the Jazzy Conversations with Jazz podcast. I am your host, Jazz Bennett, educational leader, podcast, and event host. This is a fantastic Monday, February 24th. It is the last Monday in the month of February. And if you've been with us this entire month, then you know that we have been celebrating love. We've been celebrating love, right? But before we get into this episode, here's what I need for you to do. I need for you to subscribe, like, follow, and engage in this conversation. I need for you to make sure that you are doing that on all of my streaming platforms, your favorite podcast streaming platform, as well as Facebook, IG, and YouTube. All handles are Jazzy Conversations with Jazz. That's Jazzie, Conversations with Jazz. You know, this episode and all other episodes air every Monday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This podcast is dedicated to celebrating the power of the comeback story. I truly believe that you can come back from anything with God, the right resources, knowing how to use those resources effectively, and your willingness to do the necessary work. So I want you to make sure that you have set your greatest trajectory for a week in February thus far. For a week in this entire year of 2025. That's why I love Mondays. And you know that's why I love Mondays, because it is a reset day. It's a day that reminds me that we have another opportunity to get it right, to strive higher and higher to reach those goals. So I have a very special couple with me to end this love series for the Jazzy Conversations with Jazz podcast. I have known one half of this couple since high school. And if I have to reminisce about high school, I've been out of high school for just 5 years, just a little five. No, I've been out of high school for about 2 or 3 decades now. And I was doing I guess, some thinking about the podcast and just thinking about this couple. And I'm like, whoa, I have known Derek for that many years, or we met that many years ago. And it's so great to be able to reach out to people and they are on board with doing a podcast episode. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Mr. Darek and Jill Smith. They have been married for 16 rooted in love, building a life rooted in love, trust, and faith. They're known for their good humor and positive outlook. They genuinely enjoy each other's company and embrace marriage as a partnership. Now, Derek manages work and finances while Jill cares for their home and children, both appreciating and respecting their roles. That's very important. Their marriage is built on a strong foundation in Christ, but even before that, they shared deeply aligned values. They believe that laughter, trust, and a shared commitment to their faith and family are key to a lasting and fulfilling relationship. So, without further ado, you see the Smiths right there. Welcome to the Jazzy Conversations with Jazz podcast, Derek and Jill. How are you?
Very well. Thank you for having us. Thank you for that lovely introduction.
Absolutely. It's such a great introduction. It's such a great introduction to the two of you. I honed in on the part about the laughter and keeping it fun, but also with having a foundation, with having a solid foundation in faith. And so those are things that if people are following you on social media, they can quickly gather that you guys are a couple that loves life. And you just love one another. You love God as well. And I think that's amazing.
Well, thank you. That's probably the highest compliment we could get.
I love that too. So, and yes, it really is. Like, I know we say it. We were talking, before this podcast episode about the importance of having God in a marriage. And I just said, with today's society, I know that there are different models, that it is so important to make sure that you have a strong foundation and a solid foundation in your faith to make your marriage long lasting and thriving. So I wanted to go into some fun stuff first. You guys just came off of this wonderful, magnificent trip to Australia. One of the places that I hear a lot of people say are on the bucket list. So tell us all about Australia and tell us, how did you end up there? What are we celebrating? Because I feel like we're celebrating.
It was several things. It was anniversary. We got married on Valentine's Day. So pro tip, people might think that's corny, but you get 2 holidays in one for you men out there, and you get a automatic reminder every year that your anniversary is at the same time. But also it was Christmas present. So kind of lumped it all into once. It's obviously it's a big trip there. But I worked with a guy from Australia. So the beautiful thing about being connected on the internet these days is I built a good relationship with someone there in Australia, and I was like, I want to go somewhere where we know somebody. And I mean, come on, like you said, who doesn't want to go to Australia? And so I reached out to him, and we worked out the details. And he says people tell him all the time, "Oh, I'm going to come visit you. I'm going to come visit you." I told him that, and I said, "I'm serious though. We're going to do it. Like we'll be there." And so that's how we ended up in Australia. But it's magnificent. I mean, it's better, I think, than a lot of people assume. Maybe they don't. But I know everybody thinks everything there is going to kill you. But Jazz, we live in Florida.
I'm like, do not leave the door open. there's a kangaroo lurking in the dark. Like, just don't.
But we live in Florida. We talk. I mean, we got all the things. We got the sharks and the snakes and the gators and everything. So it's like, what's that to us? That's the same thing we're getting into. But no, it was beautiful. The people there are just incredibly friendly and kind. The weather's tremendous. We were in Brisbane. We made it to the coast and the mountains and the rainforests, and just loved every bit of it. And the people, like I said, were tremendous.
Yeah, no, it was awesome. It was the first trip that Derek actually planned on his own without me knowing about it ahead of time. So, which is probably good because I might have had a little resistance to leaving the kids for 10 days, but him doing that, having everything kind of taken care of was, you know, it made it a lot easier for me just to be like, all right, I'm hopping on the plane. Let's go. You know?
Yeah. That's amazing. Like, I can just imagine in a partnership, in a marriage, like, you know, picking up the slack in different areas, and just not even the slack, but just taking over and taking control over something that the other partner would typically do. I know that has to be refreshing for you. So I get it. Like, Jill, I'm like, oh, you did this? Okay. So Derek, you're about to be booking some more trips, sir.
Yeah, I'm with that. Well, you know, and I haven't always been the best with holidays because when it comes to me, I don't really care about if people give me gifts. I appreciate them, but I'm not a gift person. And so I project that onto her sometimes. And so we'll be like, you know, Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, like, what do we do? I was like, nothing, you know, and so that doesn't end up too well for me. But so I'm like, I'm going to do a good job.
That's good.
Well, and you know, one of the biggest things, and this is maybe kind of a prelude to some of the things we're talking about, is we like each other. Like, you know, I think that gets missed a lot because there's lots of people that we love, but we don't really like them. Right?
Yes,
I love these people. I love them, but I don't want to hang out with them, right?
Yeah.
But I deeply love them, and so I think a lot of relationships, you know, I think falling in like with somebody is extremely important, and we like each other. We love each other's company, but we don't really get to spend a bunch of time together, especially with kids. And if anybody's got kids, you know what we're talking about is your life kind of revolves around them and your work. And if you aren't intentional about the relationship, then that can fall apart because, and I'm sure you heard all the time about people where the kids leave and then the relationship, the divorce happens because they don't know who they are anymore. And so I don't want that to happen because this is who we really like each other's company. And so I was like, we need to go somewhere where it can just be us and we can just have fun and be like kids because that's what we did. I mean, we were just like children on this.
Like goofing off and
that was one of the best parts of the whole trip. Yes, we did it in an amazing place, which that helps. But just being able to be with each other and laugh and have fun and remember why we fell in love in the first place and just really enjoy that time was really what my intention was with the whole thing was to get us isolated with no distractions. You know, we flew around the globe to make it happen, but you don't have to do that, but it's bonus. But that was really what was behind it. And plus Australia is just amazing.
So what are some of the things that so those of us who have not been to Australia, getting it off of the Discovery Channel is just not going to do it. Like, what are some things that you're like, you have got to experience this in person? So if you could give us like a quick snapshot, if you are tour guides, what are the must-dos in Australia?
Well, Jazz, we've been on several trips where there was a strict itinerary. Maybe we were with another group and we had to get on the tour bus at this time and have dinner at this time. And there's a time and a place for that. But I think one of my favorite parts about this trip is that we had our hotels booked and a couple of ideas, but we actually had no itinerary. And so what I thought was so beautiful about this trip, because our lives are very like scheduled. We have sports for the kids and we have to be here at this time, practice and games and all that. And it gets, you know, kind of exhausting. And I think I was a bit kind of worn out from all of that. And honestly, just allowing like God to kind of let our trip unfold before us. Like my most favorite things that we did, like I knew I wanted to go to Australia Zoo because of Steve Irwin. That's the one that his family runs. And that was like the one thing I'm like, we're going to be close. Like we got to do that, you know? However, on the way to some of these places, we would see a sign that said scenic route this way. And then we'd find a national park we didn't know was there. And then we just get out of the car and go hike because we just were like, let's go do that, you know? And I think there's so much to see. Like it's huge. And so there's, it's very spread out, and there's so much you can do. But I think it's just kind of cool to go there and be like, what's going to unfold? Like, what can we find? That was the funnest part for me, to not have an itinerary.
Yeah.
To just, there's a restaurant here in the middle of this little town. Like, let's just go have, lunch at this cafe, this random place we just popped up across, So I think that was my favorite part, was not having an itinerary and just allowing like the locals and just the road kind of unfold before us. And the Sunshine Coast was absolutely stunning. I mean, it was, it's kind of beachy in Florida, so I guess we don't get as like excited about the beachy stuff because we're used to that, but it was absolutely beautiful. But we were surprised by all the mountains and the rainforest, because when you think of Australia, I almost thought of it as more like a desert kind of area. Like
parts of it.
Yeah. Where we there were tons of mountains and rainforest, and we ended up like hiking through the rainforest with these massive trees and like these big bats in the trees, and just we're like, this is not what I pictured.
Right. Yeah. Because I'm just thinking about Crocodile Dundee and all that stuff, and that's all I think about too. It's just like it's like I know that it is so not just that.
Well, and actually, the crocodiles are on the northern part only, so it's kind of like in Florida, we go to Georgia or like South Carolina, there's no alligators. In Australia, they have different states, right? And so you would find the crocodiles far from where we were, so that wasn't even something that was having to be on our radar to worry about.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I would say too, is to do something local there, you got to go look for some kangaroos, right? That's fun. But talk to some of the locals and ask, like, what are some of the things that you would say are very Australian things to do? And, follow what they say to do, and I think you'll have a tremendous experience there, because I don't really think you can go wrong with anything Australian, because it's such a cool culture, and everybody's so incredibly kind. It was unbelievable. But that's what I'd say is get out in nature. It's just a beautiful place, and don't let all the stories about how everything there can kill you. We went looking for venomous snakes. We're weirdos like that. We didn't see one.
We didn't see any. We were in
places where there was definitely venomous snakes. So
didn't see a single snake. Koalas everywhere. We didn't see a single koala in the wild. We had to like go to basically a koala rescue place or a zoo to find the koalas. So not as dangerous as we hoped, but it was.
So I don't know if you just heard, I asked you guys to be in a place with great Wi-Fi, and my Wi-Fi is like cutting up right now. I don't know what. I'm so sorry about that. Okay. But I was just saying that I'm such a foodie, and I wanted to know, what was your favorite meal there?
What they did best was eggs Benedict.
Yeah. Really? And I wouldn't say, like, they do have things like kangaroo, which we didn't find in an actual restaurant that we went to. Not that we didn't have found it, but they have so many different cultures, kind of like America. I mean, there's a lot of like Vietnamese and Thai, and so you tend to find restaurants that sort of represent all the different cultures of the people who live there. Lots of Indian restaurants, and we love all of them. So we just kind of went, we would look places up or like either come across them, but eggs Benedict actually is not an Australian food. However, if you compare,
sounds right.
They had it everywhere, and we love that. And so we actually ate that a lot, and it was much better than the eggs Benedict in America, in my opinion.
Yeah. That's so funny to me. I think it's so interesting, like when you go places like that and then you find these experiences. I'm just going to tell you a little tidbit that if you would have had my son with you, my oldest son, you would have found a venomous snake. He would have found it for you. This boy, ever since he's been like in kindergarten, has just been infatuated with snakes. Like he knows everything there.
You froze on us. You froze on us.
That's just his thing. Like ever since he's been 5, like he loves snakes, and he like honestly. So just like a quick story, like even like at my school, like the site that I've been at, I've had custodians to come. Like if they find a snake, they'll say, "Miss Bennett, can we get Xavier out of class because we want to know what it is?" So that's how bad it is.
have one too. Our son actually has a ball python in his room and
Oh my gosh.
a rat, like a rat snake that he caught at our old house and made his pet.
Yeah. She came inside. She's like, "There's a snake in our backyard." He came.
I was trying to whisper it to tell him, and then he immediately heard me, ran out of his room, went outside, caught it, and made it his new friend.
I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. So they came inside. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. So he went out and he got the snake basically, and now he owns a snake that was in our backyard. So it sounds like our sons would get along.
They would be best friends. Yeah.
They really would. Like we gotta
have him come over and hold the snakes and stuff.
Yeah.
We gotta get them together to do that. I'm so serious because I literally take my child to reptile shows like Repticon. We are there all the time. So yeah. So I want to get into. I'm sorry.
No, so we'll make that happen.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's definitely do that.
For sure.
So let's get into Darek and Jill. Mm-hmm. And I want to start off with when you said that you love one another, you love your company. That not just that you just love one another, but you like one another. Yeah. And so liking one another is so essential to a great marriage. And if you can go back in time and think about the person that you were before marriage or right before you guys met, how would you describe yourself?
Oh man, wild, probably.
In what regard?
Geez, I know I had been engaged. We married. I was with a girl for 7 years, and I kind of went after we broke up, I was like, well, that was kind of heartbreaking. I don't want to do that again. So I'm just going to be like the nth degree of like the worst parts of my personality, right? And just like, as boisterous as possible.
Yeah.
And if there's someone like that, then we got a good chance. Right? So I was just wild. We were kind of partiers. I was 30 at the time when we met, and was not thinking about marriage or anything like that, and just kind of free spirited, I guess would be a way to put it. So not looking at anything wild as could be, just out partying, having a good old time, and that's how I was.
Yeah, and I actually in my early 20s, I had a 3-year quick marriage and no kids or anything like that. Once we separated, I was kind of just like, man, I don't think marriage is really for me, and I was kind of like bartending and going to college and just, trying to figure life out. And I don't really have hope for like finding being in another marriage and doing all of that. But, and of course, Darek and I, we knew each other in high school, but I hadn't seen Darek in probably 12 years when I ran into him. But interestingly, the month that I separated from my ex, knowing at all, he was actually moving back to Florida from Illinois, and I had no idea. And then like 6 months later, we were out in downtown Lakeland, and
good old downtown Lakeland.
He was just in there cheesing, and like, I'm like, what? and so actually he was with Trip and Jamil.
Trip and Jamil. Yeah. We were out at the gym.
The gym downtown. And Jamil was trying to get me to hook up with Darek while we were in the bathroom. She's like, you got to hook up with my boy. And I'm like, maybe later, And he ended up messaging me on MySpace.
MySpace, yeah.
Oh my gosh, MySpace. Yes.
Yeah. And so we ended up, exchanging numbers, and we would be texting, and decided to go out on a date. And unbeknownst to us, it was falling on Valentine's Day, which is kind of why we stuck with the theme.
It wasn't planned at all.
We didn't plan it for Valentine's Day. The following weekend that we were both, available. So we ended up going out that night. And honestly, Jazz, we kind of had this chemistry immediately. Like, I mean, there's things that have been challenging about our relationship, but to just be transparent, like, we had immediate chemistry. The first night we were hanging out, we were cracking up and laughing at YouTube videos, and went out and just had a blast.
I am so sorry with the freezing up. My gosh, I heard, just to be transparent, I'm so sorry.
Okay, tell us where we're at. We'll roll with it.
Yeah, we're good with it. So
Where did we leave?
I was just saying that, like, relationships can be hard, but be transparent.
Yeah.
Great chemistry from the moment we hung out the first time. Like, we were just laughing. Like, I remember laughing at YouTube videos, and we just went out and had so much fun together. And so we've just had fun and had great chemistry from the beginning, honestly.
I remember, like, one of the things that caught my attention, one of the reasons why I wanted you guys to be on this episode, because I was just thinking, I was in thought, and I really did ask God to just lead me to couples that would really be great for these episodes. And you came across my mind, and you came across my mind because I remember meeting you, Derek. I had already known you from high school, just as, we didn't have any classes together, but I just remember how, like, just fun you were. Like, you would just make everyone laugh, and you were on the football team, so, like, it's like everybody knew you. And I just remember being at Ronald Darkley's house,
I remember.
at one of his gatherings, like his family gatherings, and you two came together. And it was just, even from that moment long ago, I just remember just thinking, like, they look so cute together. Like, they just go together. Like, they just fit together. Like, I vividly remember thinking that. And I don't know I know you guys weren't married at the time. You guys were dating at the time. But it was just something about seeing the two of you together, and then, like, starting to follow you guys on social media. I was just like, they just fit to me. Like, it just seems like it just works. And so I'm glad that it's just not you guys actually fit together.
Yeah, and we have people say that to us pretty frequently.
Really? Okay.
Yeah,
I don't know why I'm acting so shocked. Like, I just said it.
Yeah. No, I love it. I think it's fantastic because it's genuine, right? It's not, there's no show. There's no, who we are behind closed doors is who you see. Who you see on social media is who you see with us in person, right? I mean, it's just who we are, fortunately, right? And, we were just at a football game for our son, and some lady comes up to us, and she turned and she saw us, and she's like, "Oh, you two are soulmates." Right? It was funny. I mean, that kind of stuff, it happens. And and I think that is just part of, and I think part of that, Jazz, is we've had relationships that were bad in the past, and knowing what you don't want is such a blessing, because knowing what you don't want, I think, is as or more important than what you do want.
Yeah.
And then you can kind of grow together and make each other better. But I think was a big recipe for our success, is just knowing what we don't want and aren't willing to settle for. And then so you make space for the right person to enter there versus settling for something.
Now, when you say that, Derek, because I've asked all of the men this month this question, because you, in my teachings and in just what I know about marriage, it's the man that findeth the woman, right? And so what was it about Jill that you just knew that she was your person?
I think just how effortless things were with us. And she just loved me for me. Like I said, I was kind of a hyperbolized, like a almost caricature of myself, like to the kind of a higher degree. So I was like, man, she loves me for me. And we just laughed a lot, and I didn't have to try to be somebody or something different than I am. Right?
Yeah.
So just an acceptance of me the way that I am. Now, acceptance of me the way that I am doesn't mean that I didn't need refinement and I didn't need someone to help make me a better man, right? That's what I mean, right? Somebody who just but accepted that hey, this is who I am. But I think that was really it. Is there was just a radical acceptance of me, and just a trust and trust factor there that was really important to me. And she saw the good things in me, right? She saw all the good in me and poured life into that, right? Pouring life into the flaws, because believe me, I have many. But there was not a focus and emphasis on the flaws, right? It the good parts of me are what she saw. And I think that's what any man wants and needs, right? Because what a man wants in his home is peace.
Yeah.
And so someone who's going to see the good, because the world kicks a man's ass.
Yeah.
You know, and as far as a man's value in the world is what can you produce, right? Good, bad, or indifferent. It's not a problem. It's the way things are. So having somebody in your home that sees the good in you and pours life into that and is a place of peace is a tremendous thing, because everywhere else is a battle. I don't want battle at home.
Yeah.
So those were the big things for me.
Jill, what does it feel like to have like your man, your husband, say that you are his peace? I find that I'm not sure if I've had that spoken about me as of yet. And I wonder, like, just hearing him describe you and what it feels like being with you, that sounds incredibly flattering, like for someone listening in. But what does it do for you? Like, what does that do for you when you hear him say that?
I mean, it's just kind of, I guess, the nature of our connection. I feel the same way about him, you know. I guess we both kind of we're like each other's person, you know. And so, I mean, I can be his piece, but I make jokes like, you know, half holy, half hood. Like I can get a little, you know, wild out a little bit, but I'm always try to keep that under wraps a little bit. But yeah, he's my piece too. I mean, I think because he's, first of all, he's in sales, so I have to give credit to the fact that he's spent so many years like reading and learning how to communicate and actually taking time and being very intentional on learning how to communicate specifically with women, because that is something I would say, I don't want to say a lot of guys don't, but from what I've seen, a lot of men just don't simply know how to be present for women. They always want to fix everything and don't know how to truly listen. And that's taken time to develop in him. But that's, you know, it's like if you can be peaceful for each other, it's easier for me to be peaceful for him because he's not going out and doing a bunch of shady crap and like doing things to purposely upset. And then anytime we have a conflict, it's kind of easy to communicate with him. And, you know, if I need to call him to the carpet on something, he's usually pretty good about self-accountability. And if he's not, then we get there eventually. You know, it might not always be instant, but we're pretty good at like checking each other in a way that like, all right, hey, so like why are you reacting in that way? Or why are you getting so defensive about that? What's that about? You know, and just trying to find out what's behind the reaction sometimes. And I think that's allowed us to get to a place where we can communicate in a way that we get past it and we still love. Like we don't hold whatever that was in like, you know, in the future. We just move forward.
Yeah.
And it feels like, oh, that's complete now. We can move on and not just carry all this baggage forward.
Yeah. When watching you, for me, you are a couple that you teach people as they watch you. And I don't know if it's intentional, but I feel that it's intentional. I feel that the journey that you're on right now, the journey that you have been on as a couple, I feel like when it's something that you gravitate towards that's positive, you like to give it out. Like it's not a inner thing that's just something that's going to benefit the two of you. I feel from what I see that you sincerely want to put good out into the world. And I say things like, as I'm sitting here, like when you guys with your eating habits, with your, you know, your routine to get healthy, with your routine of being dynamic parents, you know, when you were going through parenthood and the things that you would learn from entrepreneurship, just the different avenues that you guys have tried and have shared with your, you know, with your viewers, with your family, with your friends. You know, Jill, you are rocking it out now with your Airbnb. Like, it's like you take us on this journey of consistent growth. And is that intentional? Like, is that intentional, like in the Smith family? Like, as our mantra as a family, this is what we do. We are going to continue to evolve into our best selves? Like, is that something that is a mantra of you guys?
Yeah. I mean, 100%. I know there's Tony Robbins has a saying, "𝗡𝗃, constant, never-ending improvement," right? And we believe. I mean, this is all biblical truths too, right? I know I referenced Tony Robbins, but nothing stagnates, right? It either grows or it dies. Relationships, again, going back to why we took the trip to Australia, is if we don't take that intentional focus, it was way more about our relationship than the trip or the destination, right? That was the side effect. It's one thing we preach to our children all the time is, personal growth has been a big part of both of our lives. And it's just enriched so many areas because, usually if there's something that we want, what we're deficient in, first of all, is information.
Yeah.
And so if you don't have that information, like, how are you supposed to get somewhere? You can get there by trial and error, but other people have been there. So what are other people doing that are having a success in area of life that I want or that Jill wants? And, like I said, Jill's doing really good on the Airbnb and well with it, but why? She did tons of research. I mean, massive amounts of research and questioning people. And, so that's a very intentional thing. It's a thing we want to pour into our children. Again, that's biblical too, right? We should always be focusing on and being a better version of ourselves. But yeah, if you don't, we know that if you don't, there's consequences to that, right?
Yeah.
And we felt them, right? And I know that we're like hitting a highlight reel, of life, but there's seasons when you don't do that.
Yeah.
And then every time you get back into it, you're like, what was I doing? Right. But it is one of our values to always be looking to be better. It's going back to the biblical. Yes, you're saved, but then there's a sanctification process of you don't just dynamically become this better person overnight. Yeah. It's, through life you get refined, but it's extremely intentional for us to be growing in all areas of life that are important to us. That there is definitely intentionality. There's books that we read, there's courses we take, there's, trips we take, and that is extremely intentional.
Good. Intentionality is intentionality is key, and it's the key to various areas in one's life. And when I go back to thinking about a successful marriage, one of the things that I know that has to be intentional is your relationship that you have with God, because you are in this covenant with God with your marriage. And so I know that starting off dating, with the flirting, dating, and the early stages of Darek and Jill, God may not have been as prevalent as he is now. So talk to me about your journey into making God such a huge factor in your lives individually and as a couple. How did that come about?
Yeah, I think going back to, and I think one of the reasons why God is such a big deal in life is that because it aligns your values, right? There's obviously a lot more than that, but that's one of the biggest things, is that the values are aligned. It's hard to have an intimate relationship with someone where your values are drastically different, especially if you're going to start bringing kids in and other people or anything. And so I think even in those earlier years, we had very similar values and what was important to us. Like, as far as we liked, we're pretty spontaneous people. We value fun. We value laughter. We value, kindness with each other. The things we value were very important. I think any relationship, even if God's not a part of it, obviously I would recommend that. But sit down and talk with your partner about what are your most important values.
Yeah.
And if you're misaligned there, you're going to have a tough time. Right. Because, it's been like kids. Like if I valued, one religion and she valued another that had a different belief system, that's going to be a big problem.
Yeah.
Right. So I think it was the aligned values. A lot of it was unspoken at first, and it was just kind of a bit serendipitous. But then, as we just alluded to, it became a lot more intentional that, hey, what are the things that we value? We value personal growth. We value kindness. We value respecting each other's roles, and so those values, everything you do is filtered through that. So I think that it's easy to brush those under the rug early on in a relationship, but it's going to come out. It's going to poke its head, right? So aligned with those values is huge before Christ came in, and then Christ maybe brought in a much more certain set of values. And then obviously, his will in our life and all the other things that come with that. But I think values is really the biggest thing.
Values. Yeah. And it makes sense. It makes sense a lot. Jill, one of the things in the bio, it talks about your roles that Darek, he's he's the one that takes care of the finances, etc., while you take care of the home. And I wanted to ask you what quality or qualities that Darek possess that make you so apt to submit and follow those traditional roles in your marriage. Like, what is it about him that gives you that safety to do that?
Well, I think, the way things are now in our relationship is not the way they always were. We struggled a lot, in the beginning, like financially, and I actually worked more, like not worked more, but, like I might have, made more money in the beginning. And, yeah, like he's just been, I saw so much excellence in his desire for excellence. And I knew just something in me knew with him that, he's got what it takes. And I'm going to keep reminding him that until he's where, he needs to be. And so, it's just kind of like sharpening an axe, like just all the time. I was just kind of like pulling out the knife sharpener and just sharpening that blade for him and being like, hey, don't forget, like, regardless of what anybody else in our life is saying or projecting, I kept reminding him, of the potential that I saw in him and that we weren't settling for less. And we're, and then you study all the people that do well in life, and they have those years in the beginning where things are tough and they're, like checking their debit card every time they go to the grocery store, and they're doing all of those things. And we did that for many years and made a lot of sacrifices, and I didn't really, I went to school to be a teacher, but I didn't really feel like my heart was in it, and so I wasn't married to that idea. And then as soon as I had my first child, I knew, I'm like, I'm not leaving him with anybody else. It wasn't my plan to say I'm going to be a stay-at-home mom. But when I had my son in my arms, I'm like, I'm simply not handing him over to anybody. Could we really afford for me to stay home? Probably not. But we made it work. We made it work. We figured out what we needed to do. We had one car for a while. We made sacrifices so that I could be there with him. And then you kind of weigh, like, if I have to pay somebody full time to take care of him, then that's going to take away from, finances as well. So we just made a lot of sacrifices to align our values, and just, I was willing to just, go with, without everything that I wanted material wise, and until we could actually earn it ourselves. Right. And so just over the years, I kind of organically fell into that role, and I've done a lot of things in the mix of like making a little money here and there. But the spiritual journey that we've been on, it didn't always really define traditional roles the way that, we see it through the lens of like the biblical aspect. But I think some of the other practices that we engaged with, like with the meditation and all of that, there was some fruit to some of that, and it helped us in certain ways. But ultimately, the true peace came when we submitted to Christ. And that was a peace we could not deny that was so much more palatable than all the other things. And I used to probably be a little more, not as much as just like allowing him to be the leader of our family as I could have probably. And then I had to realize, like if he could under the kids, I'd be like, oh no, like don't yell at him, like interfere in that sense. Almost letting like my trauma like feed into the way that I was allowing him to be the leader of our children. But I think that the Lord just did that, like did a work in me where I just one day realized like they listened to him better than they listened to me. I'm losing my mind trying to get a result.
Sometimes like dads can just come in with that dad voice, and it's just like all of a sudden their ears work. Like, what?
And I realized, I'm like, you're making this a lot harder for yourself than it has to be. And so I had to just be okay. And of course I know who he is and I trust him. So like, why would I not just allow him to do that? And if I ever had an issue with it, I wouldn't voice it in front of the kids. I would maybe like later on when we're laying in bed, be like, I think maybe you're a little harsh with, this scenario. Maybe look at it like this. And I'd talk to him in private if I felt like maybe there was something I didn't fully agree with, but I wouldn't try to humiliate him in front of the kids and belittle him or any of that kind of thing. And I'm sure I've done that before, but I really had to change the way that I was interacting. And I'm like, oh, by allowing him to discipline them and him to address things, I actually now use that to my benefit all the time, Jazz. I will like even at bedtime, like go to bed. All right, it's time. They know the drill. Well, they're not listening. And so I would just, even in front of them, simply say, honey, can you say the thing to them that I was saying? And I'll kind of look at him and then he'll like go to bed. And they're like, all right, so I'm like, fight with y'all. I got too much. No, I don't want to do all that. It's too exhausting to me. So I actually lean on him even more with things like that a lot because I simply it has like worn me out so much. I'm like, why am I making this so hard? Just let him use your man voice and say the words that I was saying. And maybe
right. And that was kind of a process. And that was kind of a process too, because I'd get on the kids and she'd be like, well, settle down or something. And finally, I'm like, all right, I'll just step back for a little bit, let you run this. And then finally, she was frustrated. I was like, well, she's like, well, I want you to do X, Y, and Z. I was like, well, are you gonna let me?
Yeah. Yeah.
You let me do it, I'll do it. But then finally, like it clicked, and she's like, all right. And God's principles they're not random.
Yeah.
Right? He orders things this way for our benefit, right? It's what we learn in just having these different roles is we're built a certain way. And and I think I think just as a man, I think we want to provide for our family. I look at it as like an honor and a duty.
Yeah.
I think it's a good thing to have the weight of providing for the family and being the discipline and things like that need to come in there. I think that's an honor. And I think the more that the men lead into that, like I think that helps the other rest of the family be who they are.
Yeah.
It frees people up to have their own selves.
It's refreshing because every couple that has been on here, it's refreshing to just hear the I guess the happiness, I guess the like you said, it's an honor to be able to do that for your family. And I have had the pleasure of just interviewing some of the most dynamic couples where they just work so well together. And it's a learning process because, it's not all smooth sailing throughout your marriage. You guys have been together for 16 years, married for 12. And I know you guys have had your bumps in the road. I know it was kind of like this versus being like this. And so it's refreshing to hear when a couple just delves into those roles and they just know what one another needs, wants, in order to elevate you as a couple. Because the conversation of singles nowadays, you have these people called singles, and some of these singles just hone in on this 50-50 premise where and it does not sound like on the male side that a male would be honored to protect and to provide for the family. So this conversation is so enriching, Darek. And so just to have it with you is just it's enriching, but it also comes with the responsibility that is being said throughout this interview of the woman raising up to her responsibility as well in order for them to coexist together. So that's one of the things that I really marvel about in these conversations is just when two people who are equally yoked come together and they're able to come as one and make your marriage work. And so thank you for saying those things. Thank you for bringing those things to light and just letting us know that that's what works in your marriage. And so, Darek, I'm sitting here and I cannot not see your father. And I know you get that all the time. So I'm sorry if I added
more,
that to it.
more as I get more grades, the eyes, that kind of happens. But yeah, I get that more and more.
So your dad was the football coach, and I'm thinking, because even your mom and dad are or were on social media, and so I'm thinking about the impact that Jill, your parents, and Derek, your parents, had on the type of marriage that you had, and do you think that they had a tremendous impact on the couple that you are today?
Absolutely. I actually was thinking of mentioning that earlier, and just the fact that I guess one of the benefits of having, both of our parents are still married. I think your parents just hit 50 years.
Wow, that's amazing.
Year, and my parents are, not 50, but they're up there as well. And so we've had, a good example of longevity in marriage. And Derek's dad has always been super solid in his life and just been a great role model of perseverance. Just with coaching, I think he coached for over 30 years, and just everything that it took to win. He instilled that in Derek. So of course, I have kind of a leg up already by having a man who had a solid male role model in his life that, was kind of teaching him hey, how to be a man and not feel sorry for yourself. And, this whole pity thing. And then he doesn't have such a big hole, wound there, where that male figure was not present or not healthy, not a healthy role model in his life. And so that honestly is huge. And it's sad that a lot of men, don't have that, or, and I think that is, probably plays in a lot to some of the conversations you're hearing in the single life, where maybe people just didn't have that, didn't have that structure and that person that was even if it wasn't a parent, just leading them and showing them the way,
Yeah, that's made a huge difference. My dad in my life has been a tremendous influence. I went to it was a men's retreat. It was kind of funny. It was it's not a retreat and it's advanced. Men don't retreat. It's kind of funny.
Yeah.
But there's a moment that happened that might make me a little emotional, but it really I think masculinity is really under attack in our world. And I saw something, and it was all different backgrounds, races, not religions. There's one religion, a Christian thing, but it was just a whole bunch of different backgrounds from all over the U.S. Mm-hmm. It had everybody sit down, and it said, stand up if your dad is dead. Stand up if your dad was checked out. Check if you were molested, beaten, all this kind of stuff. And it was probably 1 in 10 guys. I was one of them that was still sitting. That had a dad who was present, who didn't abuse me, who didn't do anything of that. And you start looking around the room, and it's damn, no wonder. Right? I mean, so 90% of the men out there just come from just places where they've been brutalized, or they don't have a good example for them. So I think it's that much more important that put content like this out, Jazz, where people can see what healthy masculinity looks like and what a healthy man looks like. And while Jill chose to stay at home, it wasn't I said, hey, this is the way it's going to be. I rule the house with iron fist. It's not like that at all. It's just that I'm going to be in this role, which frees everybody else to do what they want to do and what those natural desires are. But I bring that up to say that my dad, I'm just lucky. I mean, that's really all there is to it. It's nothing special that I did. I'm just incredibly blessed and fortunate, which thank the Lord, but there's so many people that aren't. I think so having examples that they can turn to and see, I think it should be really encouraging, because we have such a warped view of masculinity, because we think of masculinity based off the roles that were set for us. And so many men in our society don't get that. And it's sad. That hurts the relationships and families, etc.
Well, and his dad should have been a statistic, because his dad could have checked all those boxes.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't actually have that strong father presence. So somehow his
Foster
dad,
homes and
his dad was in and out of foster homes, had a really
so it's not an excuse.
Yeah.
Right.
it's not an excuse because he did come from a really rough upbringing, and somehow I think one of the things he says is that with his mother, his mom, no matter, she was kind of, I guess, a mess, but like loved him always. Like his mom was always just like, I love you no matter what, even though she, she was kind of going through things. And so he always had like love from his mother, but like his story is pretty crazy. And it wasn't just like, following the yellow brick road.
Yeah,
and
he certainly didn't have a good example to follow at all.
No, so somehow he was just stubborn enough to make it.
And bringing that full circle, it was my mom that made him the man that he is.
Yeah, absolutely. He gives her all the credit. He does give her all the credit for that, and how, I didn't know what stability was like until you were there. So, it kind of gave him that desire and that reason to be a good man,
That's kind of, but it's linear to what you were saying. That's why I always like to start it off with you guys as individuals. Like, who do you guys see yourselves as, aside from the marriage? And I know I did it in terms of before you got married, because absolutely you grow. We all grow year after year. And if you were to describe yourselves individually now, it would be completely different from how you did at the beginning of the show. But one of the things, so I know that both of you come from good stock. Both of you are incredible people. But one of the things that Jill said that's a linear moment to what she was just saying about, how your dad gives credit to your mom, making him a better man. To me, just hearing what Jill said that she does for you is just like, sharpening an axe. It is just, I'm going to be your cheerleader. I'm going to be your biggest cheerleader. I know the type of man that you are. I see these qualities in you, and we know we're not going to accept anything other than this great life that I know that we are capable of making. And I just think that just goes back to the importance of a man having a good woman in his corner, and vice versa, a woman having a great man in her corner so that she could thrive in her femininity, because femininity, I feel, is at an attack too. Like it's like so many women are being forced to be in that masculine space. Yeah. And, it's one thing to be independent, and that's great. But some things, I just ultimately feel that a woman needs to rest in her femininity in some of those areas where we're not privy to do that. And so just thank you for being a good example, good stewards over, the roles and the responsibilities as a husband, and as a wife. Right. And so I want to get into, before we close, I want to get into the fun part. Why would I want to get married? Like, to describe to me how you guys are fun Smiths, like the Smith family. What do you guys do to keep it thriving in your marriage? Like, what is it that you do? Like, you're just like, okay, look, nobody can top us in this area. We just do this. We're true to this. We're not new to this. We are fun. This is what we do.
Well, I think first and foremost, we don't take ourselves like too seriously, and have a, easy time to be like vulnerable and just be like, like we have been such a mess. And like, we can tell you our full story, and it's like, I don't care. Like, I will just be in a church group and tell them crazy stuff. I'm like, this is just who we are. But we also can just laugh at the absolute dumbest thing. Like, he's been talking in an Australian accent since we've been back. And it's like half funny and half so annoying. My son usually is on his side with mostly everything, and he's like, "Yeah, Dad, it's getting a little annoying, this Australian accent. Do you want to give a?"
Yeah, please.
Australian accent. We're here on the podcast talking about our marriage, having a lot of fun. It's a good time. I think it's pretty great.
So that's been going on for days now. And even when we're in Australia, I mean, we see like a road sign, and we're both like we say a lot of the same things at the same time that we find funny. We'll both like laugh at the same sign or whatever. And, like there was like a truck in front of us, and it was like canine with teeth. And we're like, just stupid crap. And we just find like the little funny things in every little thing. It's like, that's so dumb. It's funny. Yeah. And I think we just don't take ourselves seriously, and we like to laugh. And so, you know, with our kids, sometimes we've had to learn to like scale it back a little bit because we think everything's funny and we're sarcastic and we're like, no, is this like borderline abusive and passive aggressive? But like, so we had to like, but when we're together, it's just kind of like fair, everything's fair game. And, you know.
Yeah, I think not taking yourself seriously is a big one, right? Yeah. And being willing to be the butt of the joke too is fun. It's fun too, and just laughing at stuff and not making things that aren't a big deal, right? Because why not, right? Life is so much more fun if you're laughing at things, and you know, we got a choice, right? And so you don't have to be miserable, and you think you have to be really intentional with that, but you know, there's all kinds of research in like marriages too, and again, this is part of, you know, studying and is that like when there's conflicts, if you can bring humor to it, if you can, you know, make a little attempt at a connection in a tense moment, you know, that's just something that we really value. We value back to values, having fun with it, and so just always seeing funny things, and then being willing to laugh at ourselves instead of taking everything so damn seriously. Like there's certain areas that are like, hey, this is what we take seriously, but the rest of it, like, you know, is it that big of a deal?
Yeah. And I think because we have like 16 years, we have like 16 years of inside jokes and reference points of other funny things that will come up just sporadically where we're like, you know, and we'll just kind of like bring that back and like make fun of something, you know. And
so I'll give you, we were in Australia and we were at a church service. We wanted to go to a church service. Yeah. So we're like, all right, where can we go to church? And so we picked one just randomly. And in Australia, I don't know if you've seen or if anybody's seen the videos where they get in Australia to say no, and they're like, "Nar," and they say "nar."
They have to put like the R sound.
Which, by the way, we had one of my friend that was there. His girlfriend were like, "Can you say no?"
You say no, and she was like, "No."
And
she like almost died because we'd already seen a video about that, and she basically did what the girl in the video did, and we were like in tears, and she's like, it was. We laughed for a long time.
So there was a woman giving a service, and she kept saying the word throne, but it sounded like
it was like the theme of her message was the throne.
And she said
throne, probably 50 times.
Oh, and
in like a very short period of time.
We would have made eye contact. Like,
we're both sitting there and we're catching that this is like hilarious to us because it was like it felt like she was messing with us because like played it back for my parents. We're like, listen to this, and because we found it on Facebook, and she said throne, and then she just kept on saying it, and we were like, while we were in church, we were like,
man,
I could feel him like side eyeing me, and I was like side eyeing him, I was trying not to look at him because the people behind us were very into it. And I'm like, they're onto us, you know, like if we start like laughing, and so just the whole time we're both sitting there, and you could just feel like the fact that we're going to lose at any moment. I'm like, please don't say throne again.
Right. And then, you know what? Even when you are telling this story, like I am just like thinking about how silly Derek used to be in school. Cause like I get this, like when you say that side eye thing, cause he'll just be like somebody's just acting a fool, and he's just like, you're watching this too, right?
And that's every day though. That's just
we were telling the story in Australia to our friends about the labor and delivery class when I was pregnant with Drake, and how the lady was trying to give us like a guided kind of meditation thing to like calm me during the delivery, and I was sitting in between his legs, like he was sitting behind me, we're on the floor, and like she's like,
we're already about to bust up laughing. It's just the funniest thing that's ever happened.
And she's like, just imagine yourself walking through a forest and it's a peaceful day, and then she just throws in, and then a woodpecker starts to peck on some wood, and I can feel his body like shaking. He's trying to hold it in, and then I'm all pregnant, and then I'm just sitting in his lap, and there's all the people in the room trying to do this class, and then Jazz, I lost it. Probably my hand. I had to get up. I was so hard. This poor woman, and I had to get up and walk out and leave the room. blow my nose
Yeah.
and wipe my face, and like
Just leave it in there, I'm
he
like,
was by himself. I'm like, I just got so embarrassed, but that, so like we were actually telling that story because it's so funny every time we think.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Like laughter is if I cannot laugh with you, if I cannot just have fun and enjoy life with you, like literally, legitly, what is the point? Because I love to laugh. Like I am such a good fruit. Like I love to laugh. Like it's my favorite thing to do.
Yeah.
and the relationship needs that, right? And again, there's studies like you see laughter like diminishes when relationships are really struggling. So
Yeah.
we're really intentional with that kind of stuff and just being goofballs, right?
Yeah. Yeah. When you look back on it, what are some things that like it could be friends now, but just like what do people say to you like as a couple? Like what do they say about your marriage? Like what are some of the highest compliments that you guys get?
I think that we're fun. Like when they come around, like our friends in Australia are saying like every time we left, their faces were hurting, right?
From laughing, yeah.
From laughing.
And they're way younger than us. We were like, we're quite a bit older than them. So I was like, oh yeah, we still got it, making the young ones entertained.
Yeah, I think
keeping the young ones entertained.
Fun, and then they can just tell that we really like each other, right?
Yeah.
And, I think that's one of the like that it's good to be around and refreshing. Like I think those are some of the compliments that I like a lot. That we're fun people to be around, and because who doesn't like to laugh? I haven't heard anybody be like, if I can just reduce my laughter in life,
Right.
Right? So if you're around people,
so happy.
yeah, I hate it every time they're around. It's like I'm laughing, and it's so much fun, right? So I think that, and just
And Derek's a good listener, and I think like a lot of my friends will get around him, and I think just sometimes his presence, like we have certain friends that have just been in our life for a long time, and sometimes maybe just come over for like a cup of coffee, and I'll feed him some food, and like he'll come out and just like give him a therapy session, and I think just like listen and hear them, and like give good sound advice, and if they're asking for that, and so I think it's been kind of nice to not rent him out, but just to allow him to be like also a safe space for some of my female friends that maybe don't have a safe space with a man that they're in a partnership with, and just to kind of see that somebody can hear them and listen, and that there are like solid people. So I think that for some, I feel like it's just to have that like safe space just to be and to feel like, hey, I'm gonna make you a cup of coffee, I'm probably cooking some food, are you hungry, like I'm gonna feed you, like let's talk, let's cry, let's hug. What you need?
Yeah, well, all of that is a good thing if you're a good listener, and if you can give sound advice, have fun. Like all of those are like top qualities here. So yeah.
Well, and Jazz, going back to what you said too, like what are the high compliments? Is that marriage should be a fun, good thing, right? Yes, comedians are always like crapping on marriage and they're talking negative about it, and it's just kind of a running joke about men not wanting to go home to their wives. Like, who are these people? Like, that's what I want to do. Like, I want to be around those people. So for other people to see, like, okay, that's what society says, but that's not the way it has to be. A good marriage, a bad marriage is awful. A good marriage is about as good as it gets, right? It's tremendous. I love being married. I love being married to Jill. I love our relationship. So when other people see that and it's like, hey, this is possible, I think that's one of the biggest things. It's so good. It's so good. And if people that have that, hey, a rising tide raises all ships, right? If people are happy at home, you got a better world.
Yeah. Listen, I'm telling you, like when that time comes for me, be on the lookout for a little double date situation. I need some positivity around me. Want to be surrounded by some positive couples.
Absolutely. Well, hey, it'd be a good excuse, like getting our kids together to look at snakes to hang out.
Oh, yeah.
Listen, absolutely. Absolutely. They just better not bring one in the house. Yours is caged and it's domesticated now, since he's done that. But I guess I won't be afraid of a rat snake. He has trained me to not be afraid of a rat snake. So I'm at that level.
Yeah.
Okay?
I wasn't big on the idea, but they're way more like low maintenance than like a dog. You just put them in, stay in there, and then you throw food in there every couple of weeks, and it's kind of it is a lot easier. But I wasn't real keen on the idea of having snakes at first either. But
yeah. Well, listen. So before we get out of here, Is there anything that you would like to share with whether or not it's a single, whether or not it's someone who may be struggling in their marriage? Is there a piece of advice that you would like to give to them? I know you've and if you're reiterating something, it's absolutely fine, because I would prefer to listen to someone who has 16 years into something versus nothing, or who simply just pops up with a podcast with no experience. So have at it. It is like your time. Like we are listening, because I know you guys have some solid advice, and you've given advice this entire podcast, which I really, really appreciate. Really honored to have you on. But what would you say in imparting to singles, to married couples out there who want to get it right in marriage and relationships?
Well, I think that the big thing for just our family in general is to lean on prayer. We want to do things our own will and like manifest or this or that, but that's not really what I feel like we've learned, is that it's not about that. It's what's within God's will and what He wants for us, and His timing, which isn't always the timing that we want for ourselves. And
Amen.
So, yeah, I think just being really intentional with God about it, like breathe to the Lord, like, it's just crazy the way that He's really changed our hearts and just kind of helped to shape our family. Like we already had a pretty good, foundation, but like now having that as the center has just really just brought so much more fruit than before. And so I think that that's got to be number one, is just to like be diligent and steadfast in your faith and praying about it and seeing it happen. Like God says to watch your thoughts too. I think a lot of us get that wrong, is we're not watching our thoughts. Yeah. We're thinking about our past and we're letting that relive relive in each moment. We're reliving the past, right? So it's like sometimes you have to be very intentional about, like write down what you want, like pray about what you want, see what you want, and then just let God work.
Yeah. Let God work. I like that. Darek?
Yeah. And one of the things I was going to say is write down what you want. Write down what you want in somebody and what you don't want. Like put that out there, because how are you supposed to attract or know when the right person comes along if you've never really been really intentional and written it down? And that can be, somebody listening to this, that can be so easily missed, that it's so profound that writing down what you really want does so many different things for you. But then you recognize that when it comes in your life, if you've never actually written it down, you may have the Mr. Right or Mrs. Right in front of you and not know it, because you're not aware of what you're looking for. So that's really important to do, is have some intentionality with what you really do want. Because if not, you're just leaving it to chance.
Yeah.
Right. And, that's not really a good way to go through life. Right. Surrender to God, obviously, is a really big one. And one thing that we really didn't talk about a lot is just being able to trust somebody. We listen to things that other couples go with. Is our relationship is sacred, right? Yeah. And nothing is going to mess with that. Like we know each other's passwords to our phones. We have complete access to that. Neither one of us have any reason to go through there. But if you want a good relationship, be someone that you want to see in a relationship.
Yeah.
Right. So be that yourself. So a marriage isn't a 50-50 thing. It's 100% thing. Right. So work on, if you want to attract the right person in your life, make the person that someone else would want to be with. That gets missed a lot. We want to put it out on somebody else, but like work on yourself. Like that's the thing. We've done so much work on ourselves as individuals to be a person that someone wants to be in a relationship with. And yes, we've refined and made better, but I think that gets missed a lot too, as everybody looks internally, but hell, be somebody that's trustworthy, be someone that somebody else wants to be with, and bring that to a relationship. Because what are you bringing to a relationship, right? A relationship is two ways, not a one-way street. So be someone of value to attract someone of value.
Absolutely. Yeah. You never, like, even in times where maybe I have to communicate with a male, via text message or whatever, like, I'm never going to send a message that I wouldn't be okay with him reading, or receiving it, and in the past, I've actually years ago, probably received messages from guys online and quickly, would say things like, just not afraid to kind of confront that and say, if you honestly believe that I'm going to throw away my family and my marriage for you, you were crazy. And I would and then I'd say, one time I said to somebody, would you be okay with your wife reading this message?
I do that all the time. that is my line right there. Like,
yeah, if you're not okay with your wife reading this message, you should not be sending it. And I think that integrity is like, man, to be able to sleep at night, like I've always been a person of integrity. I'm not here to judge that, but I'm also can learn from my mistakes and say, nobody wants to live like that. That eats away at you, And so being somebody who can look yourself in the mirror and like know that I have nothing to hide. There's nothing to hide. There's nothing to hide. You can open every drawer in our home and you can look through everything. And there's not anything to be found that's shady or needs to be hidden from our kids. Like we don't keep anything in our home that's other than things that are, if they're in a safe, then that's, like things that could be dangerous or something. But like, we just cleaned all those little dark corners of our life up to where there's nothing to hide.
Yeah. I love that. I think you guys have given such intricate and practical advice and, in forthcoming conversations that people should have in terms of knowing who they want and also who they do not want, writing it down, making it plain, and like all of those things are essential to this love thing. It's essential because it's the self-love first, and then it's the love for God first, and it's the self-love, and it's the love for everyone else. And so you guys have done a great job in being transparent with that, and I thank you so much for sharing who you are as a couple, who you are individually, what your mantra is for your marriage. And so if you'll do us a favor, if people wanted to get in contact with you or follow you on any platform that we can support you on, let us know at this time. Where can we follow you guys?
You can reach out on Facebook. We don't really have kind of presence we're trying to like grow or anything like that. But we're happy. Like if anybody has questions or we're happy to share anything that anybody would like to know with Facebook.
Inbox.
Good old inbox.
Jill Smith, Darek Smith.
And Jazz, one thing that I want to say just really, really quick is just your past does not define your future, right? Yeah. Because so many of us get caught up in our past, but that has nothing to do with our future, right? We can learn from those things, and it's just another big thing in relationships is your past does not define your future.
So your past has nothing to do with your future, and I think Jill said this too. Just Darek, and then maybe you said it the most, that just looking, no, you said it, Jill. Both of you said it, but I do appreciate that because you wanting to say that as a way of saying something before we leave is critical to me, because sometimes I found myself looking into the past and spending more time in the past versus what's to come, being in the present moment and going after what I want, in the future, setting myself up for future successes. And so that's very good. That's very good to not lean and glean into the past, because we're not there anymore. Like we are going forward. And so working on ourselves, and doing the work that we need to do, like you said, to become the person that we actually want, So if you spend so much time in the past, you're not working on who you are now. And I think that's good. That's good stuff.
Yeah. And maybe people who are spending time in the past, and maybe therapy is not always, I think, a bad route for people if they have all that coming up and they just don't know what to do with it. I think I've seen some people do really great with working that out and with like a therapist, maybe. And it's always an option for those who want to move forward too,
Absolutely.
I said last thing, Jazz, but I want to thank you for doing this. Thank you for reaching out and for thinking enough of us to have us on here. And like we talked about beforehand, just the consistency doing this, and you're impacting quite a few lives.
Yeah, you're running the marathon, not the sprint, right?
Thank
you. Perseverance, a lot of endurance it takes.
A lot. A lot. Yes. Thank you so much for that. I do I do appreciate it. And I want you to mark your calendar, okay? Because I just thought about this, but I typically do my podcast anniversary show. We do a live show where I have a live studio audience and all of that, and I bring on special guests that I've never had on the podcast. And so it used to be the first week in November, but my alma mater, FAMU, Florida A&M University, they pushed their homecoming back to that first week of November. So now I've pushed it back to the second week of November.
Okay.
I'm going to say it again. So I definitely want you guys there. So just keep that date in mind, November 8th, and I hope to see you there. And I just thank you so much for being an inspiration to those of you who follow you, to those of you who are watching you, to those of you who are in your lives, because I know you are making a positive impact for the better, in relationships and in parenthood. Because I know you guys are like the dopest parents. Like we didn't get into that, but you guys, you're great parents because you don't mind admitting when you're wrong. You don't mind setting those principles, those boundaries for your kids, and you're showing them how to be human. Like, just how like a student to a teacher, that it's like a wall there sometimes because students don't realize that their teachers are also human beings also. And so it's the same way with kids and their parents. And sometimes they feel that they can't come to their parents about some things, or they just see their parents as just untouchable. And I know that you guys don't have that, with your kids. So I know that you are affecting people in a positive way in everything that you do, business, as a family, as a couple, etc. So just thank you for being pure dopeness. That's my coined phrase for just people of excellence on this show. You are pure dopeness. All right.
Oh,
Thank you, Jen.
You are so welcome. And so listen, guys, Jazzy Crew, this has been another episode of Jazzy Conversations with Jazz Podcast. Make sure you like, subscribe, follow, leave us a review in the comment section. We want to share this podcast out. I want you guys to share, and follow and subscribe and like and all of those good things. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook, and on IG, your favorite podcast platform as well. We'll be back here in March with new episodes. So you guys have a good night, and we'll see you next Monday.
You too, Jack. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. Have a good night.